Okay, welcome to the Get Signed and Succeed podcast. My name is Bruce Badgley, and we've got a very special guest with us tonight, but I'll introduce all of our parties here as we get going here on, this is week 7, guys, episode 7.
That's correct.
All right. Craig Cox from One of One Life Skills, Andrew Cohen, Get Recruited Consulting, and our very special guest is assistant head coach at Wake Forest University, Dave Cohen. Dave, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. Appreciate Bruce, you and Craig and Coach Cohen having me on.
Wow, well, that's fantastic. I tell you, it's you just said you're on the run. You've just got checked into your hotel 15 minutes ago, and now you're on a podcast. Is that the life of an assistant head coach this time of year?
I think it's the life of many of the college football coaches. Excuse me, this time of year.
Yeah, obviously. And one of the topics or the topic tonight is really all about highlight films and what have you. And obviously you're a Division I school, so you obviously must get inundated with information on prospective players. And can you give us some kind of a ballpark on how many films roll in and what the process is for Wake Forest to kind of do an evaluation of all these films that roll into your organization?
That's a great question. So many people do it differently around the country. I think most people at this point do it positionally. So like I coach a defensive line, I would get all the defensive line tapes and I would have an assistant. We'd kind of attack it and go through it. We don't do it that way. We are recruiting territory first. And the recruiter for that geographic area will kind of work through his contacts and coaches and such, and then disperse the video of guys that he thought were of the caliber, both academically and athletically, to the position coaches. So it is an involved process. And, with us, it starts with academics. And of course, you've got to be in the realm physically, size-wise, and then, the speed and quality of the video has to match up.
Yeah, very interesting. Talk a little bit about obviously the video as well. I mean, we want to get into the soup to nuts here, but what are some of the most impactful things that you see on a prospective player's highlight film?
Great. It's a great question. It was a great question. It's not as much the result of the play, which most people would think, hey, I just scored a touchdown. That's going to be great on my highlight tape. Or I just got a sack. That's going to be great on my highlight tape. Because sometimes there are sacks that are based on not being blocked, or touchdowns where everyone was blocked, whether I'm the running back or what have you. To me, it's someone that can separate themselves physically by physically manhandling the person that's in front of them, to someone that can separate speed-wise and either separate offensively or close the gap defensively. And then last, but certainly not least, someone that will play from snap to whistle and just run with a motor like the Ever Ready Bunny, you know what I mean? Like that commercial. Someone that we're not going to have to yell out or scream at or teach how to have passion to get to the football.
Yeah. Andrew, why don't you talk with Dave? Obviously, if in case anybody doesn't know if you guys are related, same last name there. You guys are related, but do you have a question for Dave? I mean, we talked about some of the items, but specifically related to the films and how they're being evaluated.
I guess just quick question: if you're looking at Dave's a very successful defensive line coach. So for the defensive line, as you're evaluating film, can you tell me the top 4 or 5 things that you're specifically looking for a defensive lineman?
That's a great question, and everyone's a little different, but it starts with motor, like I said earlier, as far as someone that's going to play through the whistle. Not every play is going to be run right at a defensive lineman. So the ability or the willingness and the passion to get to the football motor-wise would be one. Two would be the twitch or ability to take off on the football quickly. Three would be to have shock on the snap of the football to knock the lineman in front of them back. And then lastly would be someone that can change direction and or flip their hips where they have lucidness in their hips and there's not a rigidness or stiffness to change direction.
Greg, I know you're have been a defensive coach too. You got a question for Dave?
I'm sorry, I was taking notes. I'm always taking notes when experts are talking, so I'm always trying to get better. One question I always have is as far as players highlighting, I know a lot of coaches talk about they don't like to play the highlight getting stopped during mid-play to highlight themselves. Do you like the player to highlight themselves at the beginning of the play so that the play can run through? And what's your opinion about that?
That's a great question. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I like to have that circled or pointed out prior to the play because at the end of the day, Craig, and Bruce said this earlier, there's the quantity of videos that we go through, you'd like to have the ability to as quickly as possible, identify the prospect that we're evaluating and look for the characteristics and some of the aptitude that I discussed earlier. So yeah, definitely prior to the snap.
And a lot of players put like all their plays on a film. Do you feel like they should, separate it by if they play different positions, or should they have their best film forward? How do you feel about that?
I think the second thing you just said, is the top quality of film. And again, that's not always the result of the play that so many young men and coaches might anticipate or expect. Again, just because you got a sack doesn't mean it was a great play. And if you didn't get a sack, it doesn't mean it wasn't a very impressive rep. You want to show a mismatch because the kids that are going to go on and play, whether it's Campbell where you were earlier, or Bucknell where Andrew coached, or anywhere I've ever coached, to be successful at the next level, you've got to be able to dominate the level you're at. And there's got to be a sizable discrepancy between the person that we're evaluating and the people that they're going against.
What is the let's just say percentage that you use film, in evaluating player? Obviously, you're a little bit different because you talked about the fact that it's academics is really the first criteria that you're looking at. But, of all the items that you're dealing with, obviously the film and then the in-person and what have you, what percentage or what weight do you give film, in the recruiting process? It's obviously a lot at the beginning, but as it goes through the process, does it kind of wane a little bit?
Well, I think, they're all pieces of the pie or pieces of the puzzle. And for us, the academics will knock you out or send you to the next step of the process. That's one, like you mentioned. And then two, what does the film look like? Is it worth further research? And three, and our head coach mandates this, and I think it's very bright. Our live evaluation of young men is as important, and in many cases more important than what the video shows. For Wake Forest to beat some of the people that we are trying to beat week in, week out in the ACC, it won't always be by out recruiting people as much as out evaluating people. And to do a great job and a thorough job evaluating, I think you have to watch the young man do something live when I say off the field, whether it's running drills, change of direction drills, dunking a basketball, playing basketball, go and watch their position drills in spring practice in some of the states in the country, things like that. And so many of our best players we've grown, we're going on our 10th year here at Wake. So many of our best kids are kids that really, we didn't offer a scholarship until they came to our on-campus camp and just did a great job outworking people and really just shining.
but the film was obviously the part of the criteria to even, get them to obviously
No,
an invite.
right. So like if they're over the hurdle academically, then they're over the hurdle or at the line football wise, then the live evaluation will either knock them over the top or keep them on the other side of the pursue or not to pursue line.
Let's talk about preferences. First thing, do you like music on any of these highlight tapes?
I don't know, but Huddle's got to do a better job with their music. No, I personally, me, to be honest with you, I keep the volume off and I listen to my own Pandora. So
Okay,
I think
all
you're
right.
being lighthearted, but I appreciate that.
No, that's okay. But in the types of film that you look at, do you get an impression of a player by whether or not he may have a higher quality production film versus one that just cut up his huddle thing and sent it to you?
I'm sorry. One more time. I didn't follow.
Well, a lot
You said something
of
about
guys
production, I know
now
that.
are a lot of guys are using third parties to create their highlight films, and sometimes
Right.
they're accentuating with graphics and what have you versus just the plain huddle film. Do you have a preference between one or the other?
I prefer meat and potatoes. I know Andrew talks about a lot with his clients and he helps them out. The truth of the matter is, I mean, there are some companies that'll do tapes for kids. We'll watch the same play, 3 different angles, an end zone tight, an end zone wide, and then a wide shot. It gets a little redundant and old. Let's just cut to the meat and potatoes and look for the aspects that I discussed earlier.
How long do you think a film should be, just on average?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I get great questions too.
We're doing a good job with the questions, guys.
I think that's tough, Craig. I would say this. The people that are thorough are going to probably watch 3 types of tapes on each young man if they pass the bumps in the road. So you're asking about a highlight tape. That would be number 1. I'll get back to that in a second. Then we do something called the point of attack tape, and that is we cut up the tape, and anytime offensively the skill guy gets the ball or he's at the point of attack where he's blocking, same with the offensive lineman, are they at the point of attack where they're part of the play? To watch game film's good, but you really don't need to see the backside offensive tackle on a run play going the other way other than his hustle. So we watch highlight tape, point of attack tape, and then of course game tape. And what the game tape goes is what kind of motor and passion the young man has for the game and what type of hustle they have. Is it, are they shutting it off prior to the whistle? Are they going through the whistle? What kind of motor or passion is attached to it? So this is what I would say going to, back to your question of the duration of the highlight tape. To me, I would trim the fat, make it as impressive as possible. If that makes it a little shorter, I mean, if we're intrigued, we're intrigued. If we're turned off, we're turned off. So to me, and everyone's different, if you're the starting running back or you're a middle linebacker, you're going to be involved in more plays than you are, let's say, if you're a defensive end and half the plays go away from you. So I would say shorter and sweeter. We're going to watch the game tape and point of attack anyway, as well as ask questions and follow up on things. So I would just say, if you're not sure, delete the rep. Don't put that play on your highlight tape.
Yeah. So if there's any question, go for the brevity of the really outstanding rather than something that, you might be marginal. That's a good one. Andrew, question?
No, but just a quick comment. I mean, Dave's been on many staffs, so have I, so have Craig, and there is definitely variation and then how specific a coaching staff will be. I've been on staffs that take kids off at 12 play highlights. So I would, like Dave's saying, I would definitely lean towards giving a little less for sure. And if they ask for more, you can always get more. But, these kids putting, 8-10 minute highlights out there and, it could actually show a negative. They don't, and a lot of times families don't understand the negative. so we want it to be something where it's probably, I don't know, 10 to 18 plays, but they're excited. You don't want to water it down, so.
There
Just a
seems to
quick
be a
one.
lot of debate over whether or not football players should have highlights from other sports that highlight their athleticism. What's your feeling about that?
I love it. I think that's fantastic. Right now, we have a young man that's verbally committed to us that, to be honest with you, we liked, and then we watched him throw the shot and dunk basketballs, and just it really excited us. So I think to watch a young man do other sports is a great idea. If someone's talented in areas outside of football, and that includes in the weight room, and not as much bench press, or squat even, but the explosive movements like the snatch and or the hang clean or the power clean.
So are you saying that, I mean, you see all over Twitter, like these guys with individual bench press stuff. Are you saying that you would like to see something like that in their highlight tape of their plays?
You're not so much the bench press, because to me that's more strength oriented than it is explosiveness. But the snatch, the hang clean or the power clean or the broad jump or the vertical jump, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. That's good.
Absolutely.
That-
I mean,
that-
because it's just one less thing we're going to have to check a box with to see him do in person.
that's good stuff. Talk about what are some of the you obviously you see a lot of tapes. What are some of the absolute no-nos?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier, and you'd be amazed. There'll be a guy, a defensive end or a linebacker blitz. No one touches him. He gets a sack, and you got the boom emoji and the sack emoji and 3 different angles. There's got to be some sort of a skill level attached with a successful play that mandates that you put it on there. Again, going back to what I said earlier, it's not the result of the play so much as the process to make the play.
Wow, that's really good. Any others that you would say if you gave advice to players out there who are watching that they should just leave that off? It's not really needed.
Just anything where it's just not something that's completely, it's like anything else. What do they say? First impressions, are lasting. And if you pop on a tape and who knows how many tapes the coach is watching that day or that night, but if you have mediocre plays and you're trying to just extend it, right, where Craig asked before how long the highlight tape should be, that first impression is not going to be nearly as powerful as a shorter one with all the traits that we're looking for.
And we touched on the fact that what you're looking at for defensive linemen. Obviously, we've got defensive coaches here, whatever like that. Related to linebackers and defensive backs, what are some of the things that are going to just jump off the screen to you when you're looking at a perspective?
Let's take defensive backs, for example. One is closing speed. And closing speed could be track clips. Closing speed could be playing receiver. Closing speed can be playing defensive back. Closing speed can be you're the right corner and the ball is being run around the left corner, and you're closing the gap and you're running down that player on the offense. That's closing speed. And then changing direction just from back pedal to forward transition, where you're putting the foot in the ground and it's minimal movement, minimal wasted motion, just fluidity and explosiveness. Most good defensive players, if they play on a team where guys are allowed to go both ways and play offense and defense, they should be one of the better offensive skill guys on the field as well, not just defense. And then, of course, when the ball, not everybody has mastered the skill of when the ball's in the air, timing it up. Some guys can run and hit and do all that stuff, but when the ball's in the air, they can't judge it. So just having that on film to play the ball and knock the ball out of someone's hands, or go for the ball and judge it and intercept it, or catch it offensively, either one. So those would be the things defensive back wise, I would say. And then, the defensive backs might not necessarily be getting paid the big bucks to hit people, but there's got to be some courage and showing that there's no shy away from contact as well. Because at some point, everyone on defense has to tackle. Whereas a linebacker, you better be a really good tackler. And, linebackers changed so much over the years. At one time, you'd take 1 or 2 linebackers a year that couldn't get out of a telephone booth, but they could break the telephone booth in half. They were just physical animals. And really, those guys have become defensive end nowadays. So at linebacker, it's range, it's running people down, it's the ability to close space between them and the line of scrimmage, and then flip their hips and move in open space because, everyone runs these open sets and these spread formations. A linebacker has to do safety type movements in many cases for a whole game, or at least parts of a game. On third down, people are going to spread you out. No longer is it a game played in a 10 by 10 box.
Greg, you got a question for Dave? Because I got plenty of them. I mean, he's just piquing my interest here. So, but I want to let you guys get some questions in there too.
What about because since you do territorial first, what about some of the offensive position groups? So people listening will know what type of things you look for in receivers or O-linemen or running back.
Sure, that's a great question. And before I go there, quarterback now is such a specialty. And it's evaluated so early in the process. In many cases, the quarterback coach, or at Wake Forest, our offensive coordinator, who's also the quarterback coach, that's kind of all he does. He has minimal geographic area. And in that one position, we're more positional recruiting. So that's a little bit different. And there's so many opportunities where you need to go live on a campus to camp. And while I'm on camp, I hope you don't mind, Craig, I'm going to switch gears here.
Sure.
When you pick a camp, there's a few things I think that are really, really incorrectly done. Number one, I'd never do 2 camps back to back the day after the following one. Number 2, I would cap my son or my player at 3 to 4 camps a summer max. And I would hope it would be 2 to 3. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, I think when they're rising juniors after their sophomore year, the summer before their junior year, you want the young men to experience different camps and just get the feel for what the camp is, the testing process, the evaluation process, but also picking a camp that way more so is just a school that's running the camp, but having other schools there to evaluate your player or your son. We'll have a lot of the Ivy League schools. We'll have a lot of the 1AA schools and scholarship Division II schools at our camp. And a lot of camps will highlight that in their brochures because you really don't know where your son or your player is going to project yet. Some of them aren't even shaving yet. So I think most kids overdo the camps. Those kids, they walk up to have camp and most camps now give you these rubber wristbands and the wristbands go from their wrist to their elbow of the 25 camps they've just attended in the last 2 weeks. And the worst thing about that is you're opening yourself up to soft tissue injury. And then, football's a part of life. It shouldn't be your whole life. So you have summertime to enjoy things. And the only way to get better is to continue training with your own high school team at home, not sitting in a car and going to camps. That's just my 2 cents about camps.
Well, that's a good one.
So back to your question, offensively, you asked, correct?
Correct.
I didn't do the other offensive positions. So offensive line wise, everyone thinks, okay, show me an offensive lineman that pancakes a guy and I'll show you a guy that everybody wants to recruit. And, pancaking a guy is certainly not a negative. It's something that we love to see, but the ability to be on your feet, knocking someone back athletically and really going to the second level is more impressive. So what I mean by that, to have an offensive lineman knock back a defensive lineman, stay on his feet, and go and block a backside linebacker, to show that type of balance and that type of athleticism is going to be more impressive than just, knocking a guy over. And again, we all like offensive linemen that knock people over, but That might be due to many things, who he's going against. The guy slipped, the guy tripped, but to watch a guy pull and then knock a guy over and then get up and run down the field more. But athleticism is such a key thing now at all positions. And that doesn't negate the offensive line. Our guy, a lot of our offensive linemen, honestly, at Wake are athletic enough that they can play defensive line. And then, pass blocking. And pass blocking is an art that it does involve foot speed and flexibility and athletic nature more than physical nature. So I would say the ability to separate from people on the offensive line, but also the ability of being flexible, hustling, and staying on their feet through contact to go block more people other than the person in front of them. Tight ends, I don't want to say tight ends a tricky one. That's not the right word, but it's a very diverse position. People, the days, it's kind of like what we talked about earlier at linebacker, the days of a guy lining up on the line of scrimmage and he's like a third offensive tackle and just mauling people in front of him. Those days are kind of over because of the style of offenses we see now. Really, it's a longer, bigger, wide receiver that has courage to hit somebody that people are looking for at tight end because, number one, they have to, be a legitimate receiving threat. But number two, so many people move the tight end around as a puller. It's not just straight ahead blocking, but sometimes it's crossing the entire offensive line and blocking an end or an outside linebacker on the other side of the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to run 10 yards till they make contact. So they better be fairly nimble and athletic and basketball type guys. And then at wide receiver, it's very similar to the defensive back position in that how do they play the ball when it's in the air? Can they separate speed-wise? And then for the outside receiver positions, what type of height and length are we talking about? For us, we have our slot positions. The guy that's number 2 removed from the outside, that guy's a shake and bake guy where height and size aren't as important. But our guys on the outside have to be able to go up and go over the top over a corner and go get the ball. And, that's the one thing you'd say, a mismatch on the outside is very important in many ways offensively, especially with the height of corners nowadays. A tall corner is 5'11", where a tall receiver is 6'2", 6'3". So that's, something that people really are looking for nowadays at outside receiver positions. And again, basketball film of dunking or rebounding, all that stuff is very, very helpful in the evaluation.
Do you think a player needs to film some of their athletic items? Let's just say, like their 40 time. You talked about obviously the weightlifting there, but the L drill, things like that. That type of athletic move that's going to legitimize, their speed, quickness, and that is that something you'd like to see in a film?
It's like anything else. If it's overwhelmingly positive and impressive, yes. If it's just no. Any gray area, delete it.
Good stuff.
Delete it.
Good. Andrew, anything else?
No, just a quick one of what you're talking about with those drill tapes. Like, I always felt that I was almost more interested in how he looked and how he maneuvered his body when he did an L drill or a 3-cone agility. I thought that was as important as what his actual time was. Can he bend naturally? Can he come out of his breaks naturally? Or is he rigid? Is he tight? You know what I mean? So, if you listen to all of Dave's comments, whatever position it might be, it's really coming down to how athletic are you? How well can you bend? And then can you move your feet? It's so important for any school. And then within that, there's going to be variations that certain people like certain things. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's important. I'll just tell you a quick one. I remember I met with now the head coach at Wagner that Dave knows well, also Coach Masella, when he was at Fordham. And I don't know how we got in this conversation, but we were talking about recruiting defensive backs. And his number one thing was ball skills. He said if he couldn't see a kid catch the ball, catch it at a high point, then he didn't want to recruit him. So, like, I'm only telling you this story because I think it's interesting how staffs and individuals within a staff vary in what they're looking for. So,
Yeah, and we'll touch on that. I'll tell you what, Dave, it's been great having you. I tell you, we can't thank you enough for obviously getting off a plane, checking in a hotel, throwing on your computer and getting on the show.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the things that both Craig and Andrew, what they're doing to help young men. And, you know, if we can get over the ego at times, it's amazing how someone that's going to give you a hard line truth is going to help place you in the best situation for your future. And, you know, people are so misdirected and misled that sometimes it sets up major disappointment. Playing college football is hard. I don't care if it's Division III or it's at, Alabama and Georgia. You know, it's hard, and it's the best of the best. And it's just an absolute honor to play at any level of college football. And I think people that are doing it right, like Andrew is, I think it puts people in a position to succeed and do more playing than spectating.
Well, I'll tell you what. Thank you so very much. You can just go ahead and exit out there. Craig and Andrew and I'll continue with the show, talk a little bit more. But it's been great to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
great
Dave.
night.
thanks,
I
guys.
appreciate your time. Thank
All
you.
right, take care now.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye. Wow, pretty spectacular, Andrew. Obviously, you know him pretty well, but talk a little bit about how impactful what Dave was saying should be to any young man out there who wants to play college football.
I think it's interesting. We did not speak to Dave at all before this show. So there was no planned script or anything like that. But if you listen to a lot of the things he's saying are things that we've said in some of our prior shows and what we'll continue to say. It's really not, there's not an exact, there's really not an exact remedy. It's about recruiting young men that have passion to play, and that's why they play hard, and that do have the physical skills, obviously, as well. Dave and I are a little bit similar in what we're looking for because we both coach defense, defensive line, and linebackers. We're on the side of athleticism, explosiveness, change of direction, like he mentioned. There might be some guys out there that if the kid's a little bigger and a little stronger, but not as athletic, and they'll be okay with taking that kid, but that's just not that hasn't been Dave's style. So like I said, I do think it's important to understand that it's the position coach that typically has the biggest say in who they take. The coordinator has a say, and so does the head coach. The guy that recruits your area, typically, if he likes a kid, he then shows it to the position coach, like we mentioned earlier. But I think it's important. A few things that we heard tonight, making a highlight film, like I do believe probably 10 to 18 plays tops. If they want more, you can give them more. I think when he's saying that they're watching the point of attack or the backside, that's awesome. But I think that's great if you're an FBS school that has the manpower to do that.
Right.
I don't think they have the manpower to do that on FCS or lower. So, it just depends.
Yeah, just depends. The one thing that I took away from it is just what you just mentioned, is that sometimes you have to find the right fit. Okay. When you talk about an individual or what have you, finding the right fit for that particular school of, the style of play, that's very important. And that's obviously what you do a lot of there is, and let's get our contact information, up here again. But, that's what you do is that you find people or put them actually in the right spot, And that's the personal aspect of what you do. Now you can see that there, right, guys?
Yep.
Contact information there for Andrew at 570-428-2872. You know, at get__recruited on Twitter. But the phone call, I don't think there's anybody out there who's doing this type of recruiting that's basically throwing his number out there and saying, give me a call, doing the free evaluations, giving you instruction and tips on, the whole aspect of recruiting. And then obviously, Craig, your aspect of, one-of-one life skills is obviously related to football, but so much just about, life in general of a kid going to college, of making sure that it's the right fit, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you talk about, the fact that it's got to be a right fit, just so that they'll continue on. Talk about the right fit academically.
Oh, I mean, you got to find the right school that's going academically, as far as what it is you want to major in, what it is you want to do after school. So you can't just pick a school based off the buildings or just because somebody that went there. Make sure it's the right fit for you overall. And I want to ask Coach and kind of bring up another thing about the highlight tape, Coach Cohen. Well, before it slips my mind again, to let a kid know, like he went over what they look for different positions. Like what do they look for in the offensive line film? What do you tell a kid that's on a team and all they do is run the ball? So you don't have any film of pass setting and all that stuff. Because I know when I was coaching, we passed on some kids because they didn't have anything. We couldn't get them to a camp, whatnot, or we didn't really recruit them heavily because we couldn't see if they passed that. They might have been great at it, but and same thing for a big receiver who they run the ball all the time. I mean,
Yeah, I think that in the offensive line position, they do got to get to your camp. If not, they have to get to a camp that one of your coaches is going to attend. But as we all know, if it's not the right coach who's not making the decision, it might not help.
right.
But getting video of any camps that you're at, like Dave said, I mean, it is important to get videos of a guy playing basketball, doing agility drills, and having that film in itself can be very helpful. But, if a guy can move his feet and show the ability to bend through his ankles, knees, and hips, then he probably can pass set. So you want to show the ankle flexion, hip flexion for sure. That would be my guess. And then if they don't throw the ball, and you're a receiver, it's a huge disadvantage. There's no way of getting around it. But also, if you go to camp, and you run a good time, you jump well, and you're beating people in a one-on-ones, that's what you got to do. It's the only thing you can do. And filming every 7-on-7 and making a highlight from that, because again, it's showing
Smart.
athleticism, but you have to think outside the box.
Yeah,
You have
that's
to
smart, 'cause
show them things that they're
even the
not
running
seeing on
teams
film.
get into the 7-on-7 tournaments, and that's the only time they might throw the ball, but it might be the only film
Yeah.
you got. That makes sense. I didn't think of that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And my takeaway there too is talking with Dave was, he's really a very simplistic approach when it comes to, he just wants to see what he wants to see. And he doesn't need a lot of but I'm sure that changes from coach to coach. I mean, some like to maybe see a little bit more glitz and glamour. Maybe that can aid what they're doing and what have you. But the key elements obviously is getting in front of a coach. And I mean, for both of you guys, what's the most difficult part in actually getting the film in front of that coach to evaluate? Andrew?
I think it is difficult. You're asking. I'm sorry, but I don't really know. What are you
I
asking
mean,
exactly?
right. I mean, yeah, it is difficult. So how do you get over that hurdle to get it in front of that coach? It's the personal aspect of a lot of what you do
Yeah.
and putting your
So-
reputation on the line, right?
Well, if you don't have relationships with the coach, it could be tough. So that's why it's very, very important for us that we're sending a film to the right people. If we send it to the wrong schools, then they're not gonna look at our information anymore. It doesn't mean they're gonna take every kid we give them, but it just means they understand, hey, this kid's pretty good. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's frustrating, you know. I'll be honest, like we have a receiver right now from Milwaukee. His name is Josh Bailey. He's really good. He's going to prep school. But he can run, he's smooth, he's really fluid with the ball. You know, we're getting him evaluated, but we're just disappointed that he's not getting offered. And that happens, you know, but it's May, so he still has plenty of time to go to the camps and show himself in person.
Let me ask you a quick question about that. And I know it's, you know, off topic here a little bit, but what's your opinion on guys, you know, because of the transfer portal? What's your opinion on guys reclassing just to give them a better opportunity to, you know, to get an offer?
You know, I used to be against it, but probably inappropriately. I don't why. If it really gives a kid another opportunity, I don't know if there's a negative. I really, it's like redshirting, really, right? I don't have a personally, I don't have a problem. I think, and I look at kids down, you know, over the years that, you know, maybe you're an offensive lineman and you're 6'5", you're only 250, but you know he's going to grow, but yet you can't guarantee that to a coach. You send him to prep, and the next thing you know, he's 280, and now everyone's recruiting him. We have had guys that have done that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean that's obviously it's a big investment, not only for the family, for the family. Quite honestly, when you think,
well,
obviously,
here's the deal, though,
cost.
Badge. Here's the deal. If you got a kid, I've had this conversation probably 10 times a year with clients. Are there things that you can actually do by going to prep school that are going to make you more marketable? So if you're a really, really good offensive lineman and you're 6'2" and you're not going to grow anymore, then nothing's going to change, unfortunately, where you can go to some good places, but you're not going to now be a 95% of the time that kid's, I said 95, so it can happen, but they're usually not playing FBS high level football, Power 5, if they're 6'2". And if that's not going to change, then don't do it. If he's growing and he's going to get faster, and that's what they're saying the problem is, he needs to get faster, then maybe. Needs to gain weight, definitely. But I think it's a case by case basis if the prep school is going to help a kid or not. And there definitely are many cases it helps a kid. Or, like Craig said, the kid can't, you know, there's not enough film on him. He's a great player, but they don't throw the ball. He got the ball 5 times. Well, go to a prep school that throws the ball and be seen. And before you go to prep school, go to the camps. And now the prep school film could be the icing on the cake that puts him over the top.
Yeah, so sometimes it just sounds like you got to have a little bit of patience. If you believe in yourself, have a little bit of patience to be able to, you know, create the profile that's going to make you more marketable, you know,
Sure.
down the road. But yeah, I mean, it is a totally different world out there now, as we found out with the transfer portal, you know, on our previous show. And you know, we'll keep putting these shows out there. On all these items. But wow, I tell you what, that was the fastest 45 minutes I think I've ever seen. I know that for us, it was just marvelous hearing you know, Dave talk about film and what have you. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more people watch this. Obviously, here's all of our contact information. Andrew, 570-428-2872. Just pick up the phone, give him a call, pick his brain, ask him a question. I mean, Andrew is really very forthcoming, and I think Dave touched on it. You know, sometimes brutally honest, but that's the important part. And then Coach Cox there at One of One Life Skills. I tell you what, if you're looking for guidance on getting to the next level, where whether you're an athlete or just a student, Coach Craig Cox. And then I'm at Sports Solutions Marketing. Any of you businesses out there that are interested in improving your indexing out there on Google, there's nothing better than advertising in sports, as Andrew and Craig probably already know here. Google is just about everything, and the higher you're up there, the faster you're going to get calls. So that's what I'm all about. Guys, I tell you what, pretty
Two
incredible
Coach
show.
Cohens tonight. Great night. You
Yeah.
tell me we have two Coach
I
Cohens.
appreciate it, guys.
I've never called Coach by your first name, right, Coach? I always say Coach Cohen. So I was trying, okay, if I got to direct a question, how am I going to take this? Because I've always called you Coach Cohen. I'm like, okay, I know your first name, but I just don't feel comfortable. You know, you always coach to me. Just the way it is.
I'm usually like that too. The only one I'm not is usually my brother.
Yeah, well, that's your brother. That's different.
Kind of weird calling him Coach Cohen, you know? But thank you guys very much. I thought it was a
Thank
great
you.
show. I think that we just keep hacking away. We want to help people. And
Yeah.
that's why we're always open to people calling us, and we're here to make a situation better for a student athlete.
Yeah, and I think too, what we've got is actually a very good variety of topics coming up here. We just did our great highlight film. Scholarship offer timetable is next week, and then followed by name, image, likeness, and then off-season preparation. So, I mean, we've got a lot of great topics kind of coming up
Awesome.
here on the Get Signed and Succeed podcast. I'm looking forward to that. I learned so much from you gentlemen each particular week. It is fantastic for me. I'm just honored to be a part of this, and really very happy that I have the opportunity to get all of this information out to all the prospective athletes. And today's program transcends football. I mean, this was a lesson in what any athlete wanting to play at the next level should be doing as far as their highlight tape, but understand too that there's a lot of athletes out there and there's a lot of tapes. So you really have to try and make it impactful, is what I got out of the show.
Well, thanks,
guys?
Badge. So,
All right.
Badge, twofold here. I'm going to say next. I'll see you tomorrow night, right?
Yep. Tomorrow night we got the
So,
Hamburg camp.
We got the camp for everyone. We got about 40 colleges confirmed to come at Hamburg area high school in Pennsylvania. There's a 5 o'clock sign up, and they're still taking young men to play. So walk-ups are accepted, and excited to see many of you there. And I appreciate you guys, and thank you very much.
And I drove to one of your camps last year, Coach. It's a great opportunity for students. I've done a lot of camps in my coaching days, but you are really getting eyes on by a bunch of college coaches. So
that was the reason
you really want to get an
why-
opportunity. It's good.
That's the reason why I just stopped by in Andrews at Hamburg camp a few years ago and was so impressed by it. I reached out to Andrew and said, hey, really, I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to know about what you do and how you do it and the process. And I think that everybody out there needs to do that too. If you're interested in just getting, it may not be the answer you want to hear, but I think it's going to be the right answer for you. And, done in a very upbeat professional way. That's Andrew Cohen and what he does there and Get Recruited Consulting. So for a guy who's covered football as many years as I have, yeah, I really enjoyed it. So all right, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, we're back
I
next
appreciate
week, and I'm sure that Craig and his graphics will be all over social media, telling everybody where they can go
Good stuff.
to watch the show.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
Alrighty.
take